Hey everybody, before we get started, I just want to remind you this episode is brought to you by patrons like Ahayao Comics, Qua, Jeremy Vasquez, Kylie Denton, Nestor Flores, Soto-san0424, and VideoGamer75. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early and lots of other goodies, and it really helps us out. Thanks for your support, everybody. Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll 5 stars. Yes, that's right. Summer is here, finally, again, even though there was a big summer rerun, some stuff happened. There were some videos that hopefully you checked out from last year. Anyway, new summer means 2 new 5 stars, broken up apart with some stuff. Though, hey, I don't know, did I do a one on Maeve? That might have been before I did one, and I should probably do one of those. We'll see when the banner comes out. Anyhow, we're not talking about Maeve today. We're talking about Summer Nero. So, in case this is your first Let's Talk FGO Wanted, this show is basically broken up into 4 parts. We talk about the real-life history of the character, their in-game lore, their mechanics, their rarity. Not their star rarity, but how frequent their raid-ups are, and some other stuff. Though, with Summer, those first 2 bits are a little bit wigglier. Actually, Caster Nero has a lot of Easter eggs in there, so we'll actually get to some lore stuff. But the history stuff is kind of wibbly, so we'll just jump into it, and I'll say that if you don't know who the character is of Nero Claudius, well, first of all, read a book, nerd. But, you know, Roman Emperor, controversial figure, liked public works, giant statues, arenas, that sort of thing. That's probably relevant. If you want more information, check out one of my other videos on Nero, i.e. Bride, because, well, I've said all this sort of stuff before, and I don't necessarily want to repeat it. And because this is a swimsuit character, you know, this is one of the special summers, we're getting farther and farther away from where real-life history anecdotes matter. There's a little bit of stuff in there, but most of it actually builds off in-jokes and internal designs and other stuff. So if we jump to lore about Nero Claudius Caster, well, first off, this is, you know, still Nero Claudius, now a caster, but formerly a saber from Fate Extra, and several other in that series. So it's interesting to note that actually several of her Ascension levels and designs are actually references to other stuff. Like the second one is actually a casual costume you can get in CCC, I think, is the first time it's available, and also in Extella. In Extella Link, which came out after this, in JP, you could obtain Nero's swimsuit costume as DLC, which was literally just her first Ascension in this. So there's a lot of interconnectivity with the art design of this character, back and forth between the two. Now, there's some debate about which Nero this is for waifu reasons. So, to the best of my understanding, because obviously this is all translated and the event is not out yet, so there's no chance to read this full script and stuff for the characters, in the full translation, is that in the story, it is Nero Bride who transforms into her swimsuit. And in the actual character profile, the one you summon, the description is more like it's regular Nero switches to her swimsuit. It's a little hard to tell, but yes, people care, like I said, for waifu reasons because of a complicated shipping stuff. Probably not that big of a deal. You know, you're probably going and looking at Nero in the costume and being like, well, I want this or I don't want this. You never know. Now, Nero as a caster is very interesting. This would be after the original Extella came out in Japanese, and obviously well after in English. You know, we already got the sequel in English. But in that, Nero actually discusses her court mage, Simon Magus, who was an actual historical figure who was involved in some stuff around that time period. But apparently he told the Emperor that she had great magic circuits and had a potential to be a mage in Nasuverse terms, but because that would involve, you know, getting associated with the Mage Association, all that underground masquerade type stuff, you know, the protection of mystics and all that, that would have meant she could no longer be Emperor and would have had to leave the public eye and stuff, which Nero is just not about. She's just not about that life. She loves the public eye. So it was actually established before switching her cast to caster, her class to caster, I'll emphasize properly, that she did, at least in the fiction of the universe, have the potential as a mage, and arguably this is a better class for her. Her original Noble Phantasm is said to be something similar to Reality Marble, which is a type of magecraft, but not quite the same. She also created her own sword, which means she's good at creating items and so on. The little weapony things, which are probably a Cankle reference. I don't know. I'm not expecting Cankle, but I believe that's the joke for other reasons. But those are apparently a Mystic Code design shown to her by Simon Magus. So yeah, there's actually a little bit of this, lore beeples in there, little hints and other things that indicated that this is not a surprise that A, Nero can become a caster, and that B, she's actually really good at it. It's referenced in Extra that Saber is actually a really poor class for her. She only does it because Sabers are the best class. So says Fate Stay Night. And with Imperial Privilege, she can copy or fake a lot of the skills to appear in that class, even though it's not her best. Speaking of best classes for Nero, there is also the subject of Rider, but that's considered to be kind of a bad thing for her because of certain associations with her character. And then one of these skills, what's that 7 crowns? That sounds familiar. What's this about crowns and privilege and screwing around with the class system? I wonder if that's a reference to beastie things. Who knows? So yes, it's not really apparent, but Summer Nero, the caster version, is actually full of little lore references and tidbits. And obviously, she's a big deal in the upcoming Dead Heat Summer Race story, as she is on one of the teams. With our other 5-star, actually, which is Swimsuit Artoria Pendragon Altar, aka Maid Altar, because of jokes. That's also a reference. I'll talk about that more in that video, if you don't know it already. And they're on the team Tyrannical Shooting Star. So, lore-wise, I don't think there's a lot else to talk about here other than just those little tidbits that you might not have known. There's a lot of little references here. Honestly, I think that's what they like to do with Summer Servants is, other than just go balls to the wall nuts with, weird stuff, or just, funny gags, they like to pack in lots of other references. And for extant Fate characters, or a lot of those are references to other Fate stuff. At least with originals, who are not usually the 5-stars, sadly. But at least with originals, you get more detail. But in this case, it's more of a, lots of references. So, with that all out of the way, let's talk about mechanics. And the reason why there's no visual transition is because I figured the front half would be short, and the back half will be long. So, mechanically, you can look at all this. This is pretty good. Also, by the way, I'm trying a new compact format for the mechanics, so they don't extend so far down and have so much white space. We'll talk more about anything you need to know about the passive skills, but I've kind of compacted that. So, Nero Claudius caster. Her attack is pretty good for a caster. Currently, overall in JP, she is number 3 in max attack, and she is number 2 currently in English, just below Sanzo. And, notably, this means that her attack is higher than both of those 5-stars, and also still higher than Medea Lily, who is another big deal. With Ilia edging out, she has slightly less attack, but slightly more HP. So, pretty normal star absorption and star generation for a caster. Her NP charge per attack is 0.4, which is in the average-ish range, but she does have these phenomenal hit counts. You're looking at a 6 on those 2 art cards, clearly compensating a lot for the fact that, hey, if you'll notice, you'll look down at her deck, she does have a Saber-style quick Arts, Buster deck. So, with 6 hits, normally I feel like that's more of a 3-ish than a 4-ish, but with 6 hits and some of her passives, we'll talk about more of that later, and some other skills she can do, she should generate Noble Phantasm just fine on 2 Arts cards and a quick card. Buster probably not because her hit counts are low, but she does also have a 6-hit extra, which is pretty good. You're looking at very normal stuff. Also, she's Chaotic Summer. That matters for certain weird mechanics and niche stuff. But yeah, overall, core stats, very good. And basically, without even needing to get into the details, with just these raw stats and the overall look at her skills without explaining them, you can probably tell Caster Nero is, if not the best sweeper caster, one of the best. We talked about Scheherazade before. That's another wanted video you can check out. But there was a lot of like, okay, she's more powerful than you think, but it's still, niche stuff. It's like trait damage. While the king trait is very popular, it's still specific. Summer Nero doesn't have any of that problem, right? It's all just pure buffs and pure damage. Now, obviously, she's still a caster, still has a weaker damage multiplier, so her attack doesn't go as far as you think, but I'm pretty sure she'll compensate with all that, with some stuff. So let's talk about it. First off, Noble Phantasm, the Golden Theater praised in song, Laudalentum Dominus Illustris. This is her... By the way, this Noble Phantasm animation is first big step up in NP animations. She's got a front-facing sprite, got a lot of effects and stuff. It's a big deal. So this is an AoE with 5 hits. It's a buster. Note that she has 2 buster cards, even as a caster, so she can NP-BB chain if that's the sort of thing you want to do. So she applies Ignore Invincible to herself for 1 turn. She increases her NP strength for 1 turn before the attack goes off. This is overcharge-based. It starts at 20%. But if you can work her into an NP chain, or you use Demonic Bodhisattva, or some other stuff, this can go up to 60%. And then she deals heavy damage to all enemies. Pretty typical damage multiplier. It's going to be a little bit lackluster, but she does have an inbuilt steroid, which is great. Everybody loves those sweeper NPs. Oh, and Ignore Invincible, so everybody knows how much that sucks on the other end, right? Like, everybody remembers the Lion King fight, certain battles with Kiara, where she gets to do her Ignore Invincible NP. Same thing, right? And then in the reverse side, when you're using them offensively, you're using them as a playable unit, you're like, this is great. There's literally nothing the enemy can do to stop me. So, just with her NP, Summer Nero will deliver big damage consistently. It has a multiplier on this. You can do a chain to enhance your back end, and it does Ignore Invincible, so it'll get through. Now let's talk about those skills. So first off, you've got Runaway Privilege EX. This is on a 6-turn cooldown, but it's a 30 to 50% battery, so that means that there's a boatload of 50% charge CEs she works with. Golden Sumo, Halloween Princess. Does Demonic Bodhisattva start at 50%? I don't know. I don't remember the name of it, but there's a Buster one that gives you 50 or 60% in there. There's a lot of CEs that's compatible with. Also, level 1 right away, compatible with K-Scope. So you're talking about immediate turn 1 NP. So that's very handy for people who are big farmers or wave clearers. When you're like, God, I need to do lots of damage right now, she can do it just by herself. Also, kind of a theme of endurance. This is another thing, right, that a caster Nero is actually surprisingly robust. If her HP is less than 50%, she gets an NP gain up, which is 30 to 50% in of itself, which... with her NP charge and hit counts already being pretty good, and her territory creation is A+, that's a lot of NP gain. And we'll talk about ways you can facilitate that in a second. Second skill, unlocks at first ascension, is 7 Crowns, mentioned it earlier. This is a 5-turn cooldown. It is a better version of Imperial Privilege, basically. Because there's no rando rolling on this. You get 20 to 30% attack and defense up for 3 turns, just flat out. This makes her pretty resilient. 30% is a very good number, and really starts to compensate on that attack damage, right? Like, you're like, oh, her class multiplier, you're only doing 90% damage. Well, now you've added 30% more damage. You add another 20% of NP strength with her automatic buff, for her NP. So that's pretty good. And then also, the kicker here, ignore class disadvantage when attacked. That's right, Riders don't do double damage to her. I believe that also extends to Berserkers and stuff. And Alter Egos, too, probably. So basically, it removes defensive class disadvantage, which makes her very sprightly, very tanky for 3 turns, and it's on a 5-turn cooldown, so you're only off 2 turns out of 5, right, if you max it out. Which means, once again, she's going to be very robust, very good for mixed class nodes, especially if you are dealing with something like Berserkers who don't necessarily take reduced damage, they just do more damage, so it's hard to compensate. In this case, you can be like, okay, Berserker bosses, I'm just going to, fort up 30% defense, ignore class disadvantage, and I'm just going to blast you. Put them on blast. And then her final skill, returning some of Nero's themes, Undying Magus A. This is a targetable guts? I wanted to say guff. It's a targetable guts buff, which is 1 HP, 3 turns. Not the greatest, but a thing, and it is targetable. And then it increases that target ally's attack for 3 turns by 30 to 50%. So, given that Nero has a buff that procs if her HP is low, and she's got, those defensive abilities and whatnot, you might think to yourself, probably the correct thing is like, oh, I'm going to slap this on Nero, and then it's going to be, I'm going to try and basically live long enough to fire off my NP multiple times before she dies, right? Or I'm going to save her for a turn to heal her up with somebody else. Which is a perfectly valid use. I will warn you, cooldown's very long. It's 7-turn minimum, as expected with lots of targetable stuff. If you have another damage dealer, like say you're doing you are doing like a mixed node, and Nero's just there for the ads, and you have your boss killer, and you're like, oh shoot, my boss killer's gonna go down, I need them to live one more turn, Guts, plus a big attack steroid. It gives her a little bit of team support. That's really the only team supportive thing she does. She's very selfish, but also very self-sustaining. That's a very key thing lots of people like, because that's the thing I've noticed about metagaming stuff is, with a lot of servants, a lot of people oversell or even fetishize self-reliance or self-sufficiency, because that means that if you have a self-sufficient unit, you don't care about whatever units you have. If you literally saved up all your quartz since day one, you've been playing for 2 years, you've saved up all your quartz, and you're going to blow it on Nero, she is a self-sufficient unit, she will do her job on her own, right? Because she's got defense buffs, offense buffs, she's got a survival type skill in there, she's got a self-charge, You don't need to worry about if you've got waivers or Merlins or anything. That just makes her better. But she does have a little pinch of support. And also, like I said, there are plenty of servants who can be phenomenal with support, or just as supporters. So, being self-sufficient isn't the end-all, be-all. You should still have plenty of lower rarity units who are a lot of fun. But that's not what this episode is about. This episode is about high rarity units. Golds. So, passives, she's got a Riding B still. I believe that's her normal Riding rank anyway. So her one quick card does good. Star generation on casters isn't the best, but you'll get a little bit out of it, and that also enhances the small amount of NP gain you get. We talked about it before. She's got Territory Creation A+, which is super big. Those 2 arts cards are very much empowered on her. And then she's got Item Creation Odd EX, which is a weird one. So let me explain this one to you. Normally, item construction or creation is increase your debuff chance. So it's also a core skill for casters, so you'll see this instant a lot where some casters will have this and they'll be very shitty at it. There's, no reason for them to have that because they have, 1 debuff or whatever. Or none at all, just because it's lore stuff. Because Nero's version is odd. I believe that's referenced in her profile, that, nothing she creates turns out quite right. She can make mystic codes and other stuff, but it's weird because she's Nero. This increases your HP recovery amount by 10%. So this means if you stick her with a healer, she recovers that much more extra HP. Slap an Irie in there, Medea Lily, in the future Asclepius. That'll be pretty fun. Now, I don't know for sure what the interaction between HP recovery and guts is. I don't think that would matter because 10% of 1, even if you round up, is just 1, so that would be 2 HP versus 1 HP. So even if Guts did interact with that, I don't think it does anything. But I don't think it matters for other characters' Guts either. If somebody does know how Guts interact with HP recovery amount, let me know. Because, hey, it's before the banner starts, so I can't do any science. Also, that would require me to roll her. I have a lot of quartz, but, there's no guarantees in this life. So speaking of rolling for her, let's roll into rarity, and then we can double back to, I've already mentioned some good CEs, and we can double back to what some support is. So basically, you're looking at, she's been available in Dead Heat Summer Race, the Dead Heat Summer Race rerun, and the new year, what was 2019, but will be 2021 for us, because it's 2 years off. So, fairly well spread out. Now, I will say, JP has been doing a habit lately of just sticking rando summers in banners for other events where they make sense, like Summer Martha was on raid up for Christmas last year. And for Guda Guda 4, All Nobunaga's Attack, Summer Nobu was available on raid up on that. So it's probably likely that there will be a time period where there's another campaign where she kind of slips in. Maybe it's a downloads campaign or something. There are certain GSSR pools she'll be in, but otherwise fairly rare. So if you're gonna take your swing, pick. Now's as best a time as any. We're just after a rerun. We're just after an anniversary. Hopefully you have lots of quartz. It's a good time to swing. So using Summer Nero, like we said, there's a couple different options. Obviously, with a up to 50% battery, that opens up all of your CEs of that type, which I mentioned earlier, like Howling Princess, Golden Sumo, etc. There's a lot of those. They like those a lot. There's a lot of them common in events and stuff. Like, what's another good one? I'm trying to think, actually, what is another common give you starting NP one? Is that the classic Great Heroes? No, that only goes up to 40%. Whatever. There's a load of them. You can look them up. It's a very common archetype that you get 50% attack up. Or even 60. There are some like banner CEs which are like, start with 50% NP and then max limit breaker 60, which also works for this. Other than that, you're probably going to want to go, other than starting NP, probably Buster or NP damage base up overall. Attack up, that's why Golden Sumo is really great, because attack up is attack up, you know? So if you're planning on having Nero not just bomb her NP constantly and actually like do damage to units, unless you have another damage dealer who needs it more, attack ups are great. And then from there, just anything. You don't need to bother with Sure Hit or Pierce Invincible ones, because she's got it herself on her NP. Which, of course, is for one turn, by the way, in case that wasn't clear. That means that all of her follow-up attacks will, too. If you've never noticed or thought really hard about using an NP that does something like give you Sure Hit or Pierce Invincible. Now, for comp, like we said, she's pretty self-sufficient, but everybody's better with support. Obviously, she's Buster and NP-based, so Merlin helps with your Charismas and your charging NP. Her AudEx means that she'll get a lot extra. She'll get that extra mile out of Merlin's heal per turn. Since she is a caster, healing casters like Iris Veil, like Medea Lily will be helpful, because that just is more stuff that keeps her alive and keeps her firing off longer. And other than that, it's just basically like whatever you want, you know? Maybe a taunter or another damage wall to like add in there to like keep the heat off her long enough, because she does only have a little bit of resiliency. And like I said, the beautiful thing about her is with 7 crowns is that, by the way, that's not skill locked at all. That's just 3 turns all the time, and there's no like extra effects you get from leveling it. So again, right away from level 1, you have that relatively unique effect. There's only a handful of servants who do that. I could probably count them all on a single hand if I really wanted to. So yeah, Caster Nero is super fun. And that's about it for Wanted. So, hey, this is a YouTube video. If you like it, give it a like. If you have any comments, any things like you want to, result in your luck, you want to chat about the mechanics, whatever, you got any keen insights on some of those science questions I asked you, leave those in the comment section down below. And also, consider joining our Discord for conversation and stuff. If you're new here, already subscribe, so you can always get more of this stuff, because there is another Wanted coming. We'll be talking about Maid Altar in probably about a week from now. And if you haven't, consider hitting that bell for notifications, because this video is going to go out for the public like at midnight while there's maintenance going on. So, having a little alert to let you know when I posted the video is great. And like I said at the front of the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to the episode early. It really helps us out and gives us other stuff. And, lets you tune into audio versions of our Let's Talk FGO show. So stay tuned for Let's Talk FGO next week, later this week, however you want to look at it when you're watching this video. Where you'll get to know whether or not me and Lucky rolled Caster Nero and what we think of the summer event. Alrighty, that's about everything. So I will see you guys in the next video, whatever form that takes. And, everybody, turn up your deep ounce, jump in your car, and let's shoot and star.